This is going to be a very cool video. I've been looking forward to this one for a long time, but we're going to be talking about 6 integrated amplifiers less than $600. And remember, $600 is the new $400. Anyway, you still have a lot of choices out there on traditional integrated amplifiers. And these are all awesome. Like, I put my stamp of approval on all of these, and one is a bit of an outlier, but these are traditional components, traditional rack size components, except for one. They all have remote controls, and they're all integrated amplifiers with more than one analog input. We're going to talk about what I like about each amplifier, what I don't like about each amplifier, and which amplifier I would choose in certain situations. It's going to be great. It's going to be terrific. You're going to have to watch till the end of the video to get all of this. So sit down, grab a cup of coffee. By the way, these awesome coffee mugs are available. You can click on them. They're below the description. And let's talk about the 6 best integrated amplifiers under $600. What I like, what I don't like, and what I would buy in any given situation. Numero uno. That's one in Spanish. Emotiva TA1. Of course, it wouldn't be a list without the Emotiva TA1. Here's what I love about the Emotiva TA1. Number one, it's marked down to $499, and if that wasn't a good enough price, it's actually marked down to $399 because they are running a 20% off sale. And if you think about what you're getting for $399, you usually can't even get a 2-channel amplifier for $399, let alone an integrated amplifier with this many features. The build and styling, regardless of whether or not you like the styling, it is built extremely well, if not the best out of the group, actually. And I dig the styling. I think it's pretty cool. I like the vertical kind of sides at the edges where they kind of come forward. It's got a USB DAC, optical DAC, coaxial DAC, which is a good one. It's an analog devices. Same one they've used on a ton, even their really high-end integrateds and processors. The other really cool thing about this amplifier, it's got a high pass option. Now it's a fixed high pass option at 90 Hertz, but that's a perfect, well, I would prefer 80, but you get something. Now you can do that with the internal amp. It also has preamp outputs that you can use the high pass on. Moving magnet and moving coil phono stage. It's got great power. I think it's around 50 watts into 8 ohms, and it pushes about 90 into 4 ohms. Sonically, it's super dynamic. It's very exciting where you have a little bit of punchiness on the bottom and a little bit of sparkle in the top where the mid-range seems just a bit recessed, which is absolutely my type of amplifier. The only thing I don't really love about this amplifier is getting into the trims, the fader balance, the bass and the treble controls. Getting into the menu is a bit of a learning curve. And I don't love it, but after you do it about 5 or 10 times, you get to know it. So it's super clean on the front end. You got a knurled volume knob. I think it's great. It's terrific. And at $399, it is an absolute no-brainer if you're looking for an integrated amplifier. The Yamaha AS301, that comes in at $350, 60 watts into 8 ohms, I believe. I don't think it posts what it is into 4 ohms, but it's 4 ohm stable. Cool thing about this amplifier is that from a distance, it looks like a vintage styled amplifier. You have the vertical knobs all lined up on the front. It looks good, right? It looks real nice, but we'll get into it. Variable loudness control, which is awesome. The Emotiva also has a loudness control, but you toggle it on or off in the menu. It's got crazy current capabilities. And the 501 right now is coming in at $599, so it's right under that $600 price point. We'll get into what I think is the best value here at the end. But the Yamaha AS301, which, mind you, is the lower powered one, just drops bombs. I mean, on the bottom end. So I think it's got some crazy current capability. I was A-Bing the AS301 with some really expensive integrated amplifiers around the $1,000 range. And the Yamaha was doing a better job on maintaining that bass punch. I mean, at very loud levels. Doing a better job than amplifiers twice its price, 3 times its price. So it was very impressive on the bottom. The problem is that Yamaha is a little bit analytical in the mid-range and just flat out kind of flat on the top. So while it's super dynamic in the bass, it doesn't seem like it's super musical or dynamic in the mids and the highs. It's got a pretty good DAC in it. It doesn't have a USB DAC though, so it's optical and coaxial only. No preamp outputs though, but it has a sub out, and it has a crap build quality. It looks good, but once you touch the knobs, like the knobs are ultra cheap. I think they spent all of their money on the inside and kind of how it looks from a distance. The box is fine, enclosure is fine, but the knobs, I wouldn't surprise me if something happened with those knobs because they just feel super chintzy. Overall though, at $350 and $600 for the amp that you get, it's not terrible if you don't mind the sonics. The Cambridge AXA35. Now, on paper, this has 35 watts, and a lot of people say, I want way more than 35 watts. However, this is one of those amplifiers that's, I think, underrated. I think you're making more than 35 watts in the 8 ohms. They don't have a 4 ohm rating listed, but it's about double. I think you're getting around 50, 55 watts into 4 ohms with this thing. The sonics are absolutely addictive. This is not a neutral amp. This is a very warm, lush amplifier. So mid-range is going to be very full, very engaging. I would not call this a reference amplifier. This is a fun audiophile amplifier if you like that warm tonality. And the cool thing about this amplifier is it's going to pair up very well with maybe some harsh leaning speakers on the top end or harsh leaning speakers in the mid-range. Also has push button on the front for all of the inputs. Does not have a sub out, does not have a preamp out. It does have a phono stage in it and no tone controls. Crazy thing is though, it's super dynamic. If you would have told me this was a 50 watt or a 70 watt amplifier, I'd have been like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. I wish it had a subwoofer out. I wish it had a DAC inside. Comes in at $399, but it's got toroidal transformer, all the stuff. So if you want something simple, if you've already got a DAC that you love and you're wanting something that's affordable and has a really cool personality to it, the Cambridge AXA35 should be on your short list. The Roland A10 Mark II. This is on the opposite end of the spectrum from the AXA35. Not warm, not lush, but clean. Not as dynamic as, say, the TA1 from Emotiva, but this thing gives you all of the detail, and the background noise is black. This thing is just dead quiet. I think this thing is underrated too. However, again, no sub out and no DAC inside. Very good build quality though, very thin, and it has tangible tone controls on the front. And this is basically the amplifier and the phono stage from the A11 Mark II, so you're just not getting the DAC section. So if you have your own DAC, this is a great amplifier, especially if you want that clean reference style amplifier. I think this is the most neutral amplifier on the list. It doesn't do anything wrong, and it doesn't give you any type of its own personality. If anything, its personality is its neutrality. The top end on this thing is really spectacular too. Just terrific. I think it puts out 50 watts into 8. Yep. 50 watts into 8 ohms. I love this thing. Wish it had a DAC. It would be perfect if this thing had a subwoofer output. Because at that point, you can get your own DAC and put it on there. But without a subwoofer output, you're having to look at a sub that has high level or speaker level inputs. And I just feel like they missed the boat with not putting a sub out on it. Here is the one and only Class D outlier, and I couldn't make this list without the Weam AMP Pro, or really the Weam AMP for that matter. The thing about the Weam AMP though is at certain impedances, basically if your speaker would drop a bomb or something and the impedance would go way down, this amplifier, the Weam AMP, wouldn't be able to put out a ton of power. But the Weam AMP Pro has the PFFB, post-filter feedback loop, which basically maintains the power a little bit regardless of impedance. But these amps are jam-packed. Now, it's in the digital domain, right? But you still have an analog input. You have an optical input. You have a subwoofer output. But really the beauty of this amplifier is in the software. So you get a fully functioning streamer. You get high pass filtering, you get low pass filtering, you get room correction on this thing, remote control, HDMI inputs. So this really becomes a digital hub. It doesn't have as many inputs as far as analog inputs. It doesn't have a phono stage, which I don't love. I think if it would have had a phono stage, it would have been perfect. I don't know why they just didn't make a Weam amp out of the Weam Ultra. Like, make it a little bit better. Put an amplifier section in there. I don't get that. Maybe that's going to be the next iteration of the Weam amp. The Weam amp Ultra, maybe. But at that point, you would have a phono stage. I could use another analog input, but I'll be okay with one analog input. The thing that I don't like about the Weam amp, again, no preamp outputs. So you can't use this as a front end on a really beefy 2-channel amplifier. I think that would be a borderline perfect product if it had preamp outputs, but it does not. The styling is really good. The build quality is actually really good. You get a remote control. You can also control this thing with an app, but the HDMI and the streaming capabilities and the amplifier is passable. The tonality leans just a touch warm. I mean, we're just talking like the head just going like that. It's a great sounding amplifier, 3255 Texas Instruments amp chipset. With the PFFB, it addresses some of the concerns that people had on the first Weam amp as far as being able to hit its rated power. And finally, the Denon PMA 600NE, still being made today, was one of the first videos on this channel. Actually, the TA100 from Emotiva, which was one generation back, was compared to the PMA 600NE from Denon. I love this thing. I love the way it looks. It's got a ton of features. It does have a DAC. It doesn't have a USB DAC though. So it has optical, coaxial, has a phono stage on the back. No preamp outputs though, but it just looks super cool. This has a sound that is very similar to the Cambridge. So warmth, dynamic, really on the bottom end. You sacrifice clarity in the really upper mid-range and top end, but it sounds really, really good, and it's a really fun amplifier. I think it's got a burr brown DAC in it. Everything is just like velvety though, so it's gonna cover up and sand off some of the harsh edges with different speakers, but also different recordings. Love the PMA 600NE. Getting a little bit long in the tooth. I doubt they're going to change it. I think if anything, is throwing more money at their home theater division than us lowly 2-channel people. One really bad thing about this amplifier is if you look under the hood, it's a mess. It looks like a rat's nest. Like, you look at all the other ones, you know, save for the Weam AMP Pro, because I have no idea what it looks like in there. It's just PCBs in there. You look at the TA1, you have like 3 different PCBs, and one's a DAC PCB, right? Toroidal transformer, you have caps there, like real components, like something you would look at the inside of the TA1 and be like, oh, okay, I can see where it's a little bit updated, but it looks like an amplifier from the 80s, from the 90s. Then you look at the Roland A10 Mark II. Again, beautiful toroidal transformer. Look at the inside of the Cambridge Audio AXA35. Again, beautiful toroidal transformer. Even the Yamaha is pretty clean on the inside. Their transformer is kind of like in its own little housing. And I think it's a linear power supply, but I don't think it's a toroidal power supply. Then you look at the inside of the Denon PMA 600NE. It looks like I made it. It looks like they went into a parts bin from the home theater division and just started picking out boards, and then somebody was like, hey, here's some wire, just connect it together. Does that have an impact on how it sounds? No, absolutely not. But I thought it was really interesting when I was looking at the B-roll for this for this video, because they posted it. Like, they have a picture of it. I mean, I think they maybe need to look at some of the other competition in the same price category, because it's not a good look. Looks like my living room. What is my choice? Overall, I would choose the Emotiva TA1. It's got the most options. It's got the most traditional design. So you got your toroidal transformer, you got everything else, but you have a high pass filter, you have a USB DAC, you have 2 extra analog inputs, a phonostage, moving magnet, moving coil, and sonically, I think, for my taste, it may not be for your taste, it has that dynamic, kind of fun 80s, early 80s style Pioneer sound. I just love it. Love it. Second choice would be the Weam amp from a convenience standpoint, because you have HDMI and you have streaming. So you don't really have to worry about the whole digital end of it, and the price is crazy. And the price on the Emotiva, again, $399 right now. And then you drop like $20 and you get the Weam AMP Pro coming in at $379. So you're under $400. So if you find a speaker that's on sale for $120, you're getting that entire system under $600. The TA1 has Bluetooth, so and an FM tuner. So technically speaking, you have a source if you have a phone, which most people do. But with the room correction, the EQs, 10-band EQ, parametric EQ, room correction, HDMI, you're set up. You can hook up a smart TV to your Weam AMP Pro and be rocking and rolling, and you already have streaming anyway. So I just don't think you can get over the value proposition and the functionality, especially with the HDMI, for the Weam AMP Pro. Then I would choose actually the Cambridge, because of its personality. So I'm choosing the Cambridge as my third choice purely on sonics. You do have to be a little bit careful about speaker pairings, because on paper it doesn't have a ton of power, but I never ever thought that this thing lacked power when I was listening to it at reasonable levels, all the way up to even 80, 85 dB, which is loud. The drawback to it, though, is you gotta have your own front end on it. So that will add to the price, but I do love, for whatever reason, that sonically that thing is just amazing. And my next choice, sonically, but for a completely opposite reason, is the Roland A10 Mark II. Again, though, no DAC, no subwoofer out, but the sonics are so addictive with their just ultimate clarity, and like the noise floor is just non-existent. It's really fun. And lastly, it would be the Yamaha. Yamaha looks great on paper, but it's just harsh in the mids and harsh on the top. It gives you everything you need from a functional standpoint, but I've never connected with it from a sonics standpoint. Doesn't mean it's a bad amplifier. They sell a boatload of them, and I have one as reference for an affordable integrated amplifier. But now with the Emotiva TA1 on sale for $400, we're only talking $40 or $50 more than the AS301. And the Emotiva mops the floor from a feature standpoint and a sonic standpoint from the Yamaha. The Yamaha, more dynamic though, and will be able to handle more of the bass bombs than the TA1. But I just don't think it sounds good at higher volumes. Even when you're tweaking the variable loudness control and the tone controls, it can be a bit harsh, especially with revealing speakers. I've got another list here. We kind of already touched on it. Sonics, it would go, as far as how it sounds for me, Emotiva, Cambridge, Roland, Weam, Denon, and then the Yamaha. Because I think the Denon has kind of that yummy, warmth, caramelly sound as the AXA35. You're just getting more power. And then functionality, Weam, because you have all the stuff. Emotiva, because it has all the stuff, save for if the TA1 had an HDMI input, game over. Game over, man. Game over. What movie is that from? Maybe we should put her in charge. Best movie ever. Also the best sequel ever. I'm not going to give you any more, But in the comments, maybe we should put her in charge then. All right. Functionality, we have Weam, Emotiva, Denon, because you have a bunch of stuff going on with the Denon with the DAC, and you have subwoofer output. Then the Yamaha, kind of a tie for third with Denon and the Yamaha. Then the Cambridge and the Rotel would be tied for last in functionality. I hope you really liked this video. I had a ton of fun kind of going back and remembering all these things. These are all great amplifiers, but for different reasons. And I think depending upon your situation, you get a lot of choice for less than $600, which is still pretty bananas for a traditional component. Weam's a little bit different, I get it. But these are all awesome, and you could use this as your forever 2-channel amplifier. Until it breaks if it's the Denon, because that thing's a mess inside. I don't think you're repairing anything in the Denon. And you're not repairing anything in the Weam. But these other amplifiers, somebody can work on these things. Or at least you could get a replacement PCB for whatever section is having issues. Huge value on all of these. If you liked this video, you really need to check out this video about my favorite budget speakers, favorite speakers below $600. I can't remember which one it is. Anyway, it's like the best speaker, the best value speakers. I'll put it here or here. All these will be linked in the description. Those are affiliate links. If you click and buy, I get a commission, but it really helps support the channel because you don't have to pay anything extra. I don't know how long the Emotiva sale is gonna last, so if you're interested in the TA1, now is the time to buy it because it's the lowest price I've ever seen it be. At $399. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. Share this out if you think somebody else could get some value from it. Love you. Bye.